Tommy, we're 3 weeks into the NFL season, and there's already been quite a few controversial calls. Officials calling everything from illegal use of the hands to defenders to roughing the passer penalties to unsportsmanlike conduct. A lot of controversy. Should the NFL allow penalties to be reviewable? And does the NFL have a bigger problem where the game's quality is becoming poor because of too many penalties being called?
Well, the issue here is, what does the NFL want the games to look like? And the way that they're calling the penalties, they want it to look like a 45 to 35 shootout with all passing. So that's what they're trying to get done. That's what they're trying to get accomplished. That's their agenda, is to get more throwing and more success through the air for their teams. And they're going to keep calling these things until the defenders start to figure it out, and then they'll stop. And so you'll start to see a decline in the penalties, but we'll also see is just a crazy amount of scoring. So that's the main goal of this thing. I don't like it whatsoever, but I think it'll eventually even itself out, and we'll see a ton of points and less penalties. But I mean, I wish it would just go back to the way it was.
Tommy, I don't think it will even itself out, and I don't think that's going to happen because the game is actually being slowed down by how many penalties are being thrown. The NFL thinks that by making the rules the way they currently have them, it will create more points, a more exciting game, more people will want to watch that game of football. But the game is being slowed down so much. There are so many ridiculous penalties being called that it's making it hard to watch the game. The calls the last few weeks have been so atrocious. I'm obviously biased to the 49ers. There were two ridiculous calls in the Niners-Cardinals game. One where they called Patrick Willis for leading with the crown of the helmet when he had just a regular sack, 15-yard penalty. Another 15-yard penalty on hitting the quarterback in the shoulder with the defender's shoulder. Called that a roughing the passer penalties because he was going to slide to the ground even though he hadn't actually slid yet. Those type of penalties are turning fans off from the game. I get that the league is trying to protect players, especially with all the concussion issues that they've had in the past, but there is a difference between protecting players' heads and calling a penalty anytime there's a hard hit. And in addition, they recently made stricter rules in what defenders can get away with in terms of illegal contact and touching them more than 5 yards off the ball. How is that impacting safety at all if someone's bumping someone a little bit 5 yards off the ball? It is making the product horrible to watch on the field. And I think they've got to instill the ability for teams to challenge flags. Why not allow a team to challenge a pass interference play? It's dictating the outcomes of games. It is dictating the outcomes of games. Okay, well then figure out a way to call it correctly. I mean, you can't have every single call challenged. I mean, that would take forever. You call every. I mean, they already challenge. Every score is reviewed, every turnover is reviewed, everything's already reviewed. And what are you gonna do? Every single play, you have to go watch the replay over and over. I mean, you might as well not even have refs on the field. Tommy, when did I say that? You still have the same amount of challenges, but make it so that you can challenge a pass interference, make it so you can challenge a roughing the passer, so that in these critical moments of the games, the referees aren't determining the outcome. There were calls last year that literally dictated whether a team's made the playoffs or not, whether they had home field advantage or not. These aren't these random penalties that just end when the game ends. These are dictating the outcomes of team seasons, people's jobs. You cannot let that all fall on one referee's bang-bang decision. It's a tough job for him to decide if a player led with the crowd of the helmet, use their hands, hit someone in the neck area. There's so many different rules and protocols now for what's a penalty and what's not. All I'm saying is you can still have the same amount of challenges, but why not incorporate a few different penalties to make them challengeable? I don't know. I mean, then it gets really ticky-tacky. I just... Judgment calls are judgment calls. I mean, it's not something... Normally these calls are not things that are bang-bang, to be honest with you. I mean... There's a few times, yes, with the leading of the crown of the helmet. But maybe. Tommy, that's not true because a judgment call only goes so far. And when a team is driving down the field to win the game and a defense stops them and a defender makes a perfectly clean tackle, shoulder to shoulder, but it's happened so bang bang the referee thinks it's helmet to helmet and calls a 15-yard penalty that determines the outcome of the game. Why should that not be challengeable when a game is on the line and all you have to see is that it wasn't helmet, that it was shoulder, and it's not a flag? It won't slow down the game if you still have the same amount of challenges. You're just challenging something different. Yeah, but you can't challenge something in the final 3 or 2 minutes anyway, correct? So then what are you going to say? So every single penalty then needs to be reviewed automatically?
Is that what you're saying? Because you have to change almost all the challenge rules, and then say you can challenge whenever you want. I mean, if that's the case, then why don't you just challenge every single play? You know, can we challenge holding now? Can we challenge?
Okay, that doesn't even make any sense. Now you went down.
What?
You start talking about the last 2 minutes of the game. I get you gotta, they'd have to come up with certain criteria for what can be challenged and what can't, as far as an official review goes. But you're acting like this is gonna slow down the game. Why would you not? I'm telling you, Tommy, when this happens to the Chargers, you're going to come back with your tail between your legs, just like you did with soccer, and tell me that I was right.
It did happen with the Chargers. It happened with the Chargers 2 years ago when they lost to the Saints and ended up not making the playoffs. It was the exact same thing.
So why wouldn't you want to be able to challenge that?
I mean, at some point, it just gets ridiculous. I mean, I understand, just you want to get all the callers, you want everything right, fine. But you can't. But then where do you draw the line? What is then not challengeable?
I think you start out with a few very distinct things. You start out with a roughing the passer penalty. You start out with a pass interference penalty, and maybe you pick one other thing. You focus on the type of things that are really hard to get right in a bang-bang environment, when a referee has literally a millisecond to make a call. I'm not blaming the refs. They're under enormous amount of pressure. With all this instant replay, it's very difficult for them to get it right the first time, while all these other people can criticize them because they have every instant replay angle. But at the end of the day, there is too much on the line, and these rules are too hard to enforce to not allow some type of instant replay. And on top of that, the NFL is just ruining this once beautiful game. And I get that they have issues with concussions and they're worried about the liability. But it's becoming hard to watch. You see any good play and you expect a penalty. You're relieved when a penalty isn't thrown. And I don't know, between this and all the domestic violence and the other issues the NFL is dealing with, there's a lot of speculation. Mark Cuban came out a few months ago and said, the NFL is on top right now, but it won't be that way forever. Tommy, you know boxing and horse racing well. They were the pinnacle of American sports back in the 50s. You never know with the NFL. They start producing a crap product on the field with what's going on off the field. You never know if this sport will stay at the top.
No, I totally agree with that. It sounds crazy to even think about it, but in 20 years, where will football be, to think about it like that? And I kind of agree with Cuban to the point where if they change the game too much. In the documentary, what was the one about the concussions, League of Denial or something like that?
When the game stands, League of Denials.
Yeah, they said something to the effect of if 10% more mothers think that football's unsafe for their kids and they pull them out of football, that the game would die, or so they had some kind of crazy study like that, which I could see happening. And it seems like the media loves stories with. I mean, not love stories, but they love to report on kids getting hurt playing football or, ex-NFL players who can't walk anymore or think anymore. And, it's just the more that comes out, the worse it looks for the game. And maybe you start to think to yourself, maybe I should not be lining up and playing football. Maybe I should go play a different game. This is just not worth it. So you never know. I mean, we both played it in high school. I don't think either of us had any lasting effects from it, it's a completely different thing.
If you never know. You never know with me, Tommy.
You never know with you. I know you had a couple of bangs to the head, but it's.
What Tommy? Put it this way: Would you let your kid play football?
Not until he's in high school.
What?
Not until he's in high school, no.
But you would let him play high school football?
Yes.
As would I, but I think almost with a. Kind of like a blind eye to what's actually going on, understanding the repercussions of what could happen through football. Probably just because we love playing the sport that we'd let our kids play it. But I can guarantee you there's a lot of parents out there, current parents and will be parents in a few years, that that there's under no circumstance will they let their kids play football. My mom has even come and told me, with what she knows now, she wouldn't have signed the waivers to let me play.
Let me ask you this: would you let your kids surf?
Yeah, I would probably let my kid do whatever he wants.
Right, but I don't have the numbers on this, but I would guess there's more lives lost surfing than there are playing football.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, man. That's an interesting stat.
No, if someone dies playing football, it's the front news, man. It's national news. If it happens surfing, maybe it's a local thing, but you're not going to hear about it nationally. People drown all the time. So
there's definitely a magnifying glass on the sport. I will agree with you there.
I mean, I will agree. I mean, yeah, there's probably more broken bones and whatnot, and maybe more concussions in football than there are in any other sport. But I think people are too quick to look at worst case scenario and go with that. I mean, a kid falls. I hate to keep using surfing but I just can't think of a better sport to use right now. Falls off his board, breaks his leg, can't swim. He might, get stuck under for a while, might have brain damage, something like that. I mean, I guarantee that happens more often than a kid breaking his neck playing football.
All right, what about gymnastics? Maybe.
I would let my daughter do gymnastics. Yes.
I was just trying to pick a harder sport for you to give us an example on what could happen that would cause them, bodily harm that would make their parents no longer. I was just trying to come up with
gymnastics,
a different challenge.
You kidding me? I mean, that's a dangerous sport. You're flipping around up there. That's got to be pretty dangerous. I don't think there's fatalities in gymnastics. Don't get me wrong, but that's got to be a more dangerous sport. And I will give you this: in high school, when our football coach was trying to get us to sign up, he had to address the issue of, is this game safe? And he addressed the whole school, and he said, guess what the least safe sport is in high school, injury-wise per participant, and everyone gave their guesses, and guess what the final answer was?
What?
Cheerleading.
You don't think that was a joke?
No, not a joke. There are more injuries in cheerleading per participant than any other sport in high school. Or at least there were.
Can you get us a stat on that just to back it up?
I mean,
Not right
I
now.
can try and find it.
After.
Yeah, I can try and find it. I mean, again, this is information from 2000. When was I freshman? 2004.
From a football coach who had a vested interest in the information that.
Of course.
But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, but that's that was what we're given.
But Tommy, this is. Oh. I think it really shows the problem the NFL has right now based on the last two things we've been talking about. Because on one end, I personally feel like the product on the field is absolute crap right now. Like, as a Niner fan, I watched the Niners not have home field advantage in the playoffs last year because Ahmad Brooks made a game-saving sack on Drew Brees last year in a Niners-Saints game where the ref said that his arm was partially around Drew Brees' neck when he made the sack, called a 15-yard penalty, and the Niners lost the game. And that one game decided Seattle getting home field over the Niners. And I know this is a biased case, but I really think this is going to start happening more, not just with my team or your team, but the NFL in general. And it's becoming problematic because any exciting play you see that's legal is being called a penalty along with illegal plays. And so you have that on one side. You have, in my opinion, the product being diminished on the field. And then on the other aspect of it, you have them being pressured to diminish the product because parents don't want to let their kids play and they're trying to prove it safe. So it's almost like they're in this very tough position in the middle where you have to decide how you could possibly balance the product still being exciting and relevant enough for people to want to watch, but also make people believe it's safe enough to let their kids play.
Yeah, and I did. I found it. Found the study. So, cheerleading more dangerous.
Yeah, this is the part where you tell us, that you give us the background.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's get it.
Study found that 66% of the types of injuries that come from cheerleading, and that more than a third of girls who suffer from concussions are unaware of the symptoms, do not report, blah, blah, blah. Says that there have been, this is from 2007, 110 catastrophic brain or neck injuries in 1 year.
From cheerleading.
Which is more than football.
Interesting. Tommy, give yourself a little pat on the back.
Now, granted, a lot of this has to do with the competitive cheer, not necessarily cheerleading you think about when you think about high school football, where with the girls on the side, they don't really do anything too crazy, but it's the girls who do competitive cheer, which you see on ESPN, where they're flipping around like crazy stunts and whatnot, where they're throwing them 20 feet in the air, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, but Tommy, you do make a good point that there's definitely a magnifying glass on football right now, and the media is paying attention to injury. I mean, the cover of Time magazine was just a kid's family who they just lost playing high school football, a freak injury. There's definitely a spotlight on it right now, so that, like we said, that magnifies the problem. But it's going to be interesting to watch, and so far this year, Tommy, we've been pretty good on predictions. I said that Kirk Cousins would be the starter by week 4. You said the Niners wouldn't make the playoffs, which we're going to talk about next. And I'm saying the new thing to watch for this year, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I think there's going to be several calls that dictate the outcome of games that the league can't hide, that they can't, like so far the problems they've had to talk about have been off the field. I think you're going to start seeing Roger Goodell and the league having to address problems with officiating on the field. So that's my prediction for the next 3 to 4 weeks.
All right, we'll keep an eye out.